Welcome to Season 2 of the Simply Dynamic podcast. I'm Jennifer Maiden, co-creator and executive producer of this podcast, and the Assistant Dean of Graduate Studies at Rowan University's Rohr College of Business. Today, I invite you to join our hosts, Joe Devine and Christina Renna, for a discussion with Jimmy Quaile, a certified sommelier, musician, singer, teacher, and author. In addition to writing about wine, Jimmy teaches wine classes, hosts somm dinners for corporate clients and casino special events, and donates his time and talents in support of his favorite charities.
Hey, Christina, guess what today is?
Is it Simply Dynamic Podcast Day, Joe?
It is Simply Dynamic Podcast Day, and today we have a Simply Dynamic guest, someone who I have known a long time, and it's kind of a little deviation from what we've done in our previous podcast, because this is not only about leadership, but it's about career transitions, but someone I've known who's had multiple careers, and I think you'll see that it's an interesting interview, and we hope he could educate people in general about life and also about how career transitions are important.
Yep.
So, Jimmy Quaile, it's great to have you today.
Oh, it's a thrill to be here. It's good to always spend time with you. It doesn't matter where we are.
I don't know where it is, but to put the facts on the record, we've known each other over 60 years. Right?
I was told there is a picture of both of us in a playpen.
Well, I don't want to see that, but I'm sure there is one. But anyhow.
For a point of clarity, I am 43 years old and have known neither of them for 60 years.
To offset my knowledge, right?
We just like to emphasize my youth.
So, Jimmy, thanks for being with us today.
That's a pleasure.
And you know, this podcast is about leadership and it's about careers and things of that nature. And we thought it'd be interesting to start with you. You had an interesting life. You've done a lot of different things, and now you're in this business that's really considered a top tier of what you do. So take us a little bit about on your life journey and how you got to what you're doing today.
Well, I started as a musician and a singer. I was in a band with my family. I'm one of 11. I'm the fifth down. And my father saw the Osmond Brothers on the Andy Williams show, and he thought, my kids can do that. And then when the TV broke, he had us singing Bye Bye Blues and Coney Island Baby and all these old tunes. He was in a Mummers. He was a string band guy, self-taught. He only thought, okay, you sing higher than him, you sing higher than there. So they would clear the dinner dishes and he would hand out harmony parts. So we got okay to perform in front of an audience, which boded well for me in my life. But we started playing. I was 6 years old, and we were a performing band around the country and casinos and performing arts centers all my life. And we played, and then eventually we bought our own club, and we played in our own nightclub, which was fun. And then when Atlantic City got Atlantic City, we sold the club, and I started performing 4 shows a night, 6 nights a week in Atlantic City and Reno, and opening acts and different things. And then after they started taking lounges out and things like that, we started performing what's called the outside. Then you would do private corporate parties. And wound up seeing Joe Devine again as I did like galas for hospitals and things. But I always knew there was something more. I was always looking for a next chapter, always. And I was married to a chef, and we bought our own restaurant. So another transition in your life. And then we ran that until 2008 when the stock market and everything was changing everything. Right. And then I was studying wine through all the time that we were together, and I married my wife a long time ago. So I just decided that maybe wine would be what I wanted to do. I was introduced to Joe Arkin and Roger Wilco and Penn Salkin, and he wanted an entertainer because he thought, you're going to be on the wine floor. I need somebody that can deal with all kinds of people. It's the United Nations and Roger Wilco and Penn Salkin. It's just everybody from everywhere drinking anything and everything. And I thought, well, that might be fun. But I was still playing, and I told Joe, I don't know how to pull this off. He said, do what you got to do. Just tell me when you can be here. And so that turned out to be more study about wine, and then wondering how much do I know compared to everyone else. Okay, so there's this quartermaster sommeliers. They just call them somms. And there was a TV show called Somm, documentary. And it was supposed to be the test nobody passed. And I thought, nah, it's absolutely me. I thought, I can pass. So I took the test, I passed, and I wind up now you're a somm, but you're not doing what a somm normally does. They normally work in these high-end restaurants and stuff like that. But I started writing conversations that I was having with customers, and I called them Tales from the Wine Floor, and I posted them. And when I got to 100, And I had thousands of people following me because of entertainment. And I would always bring people with me no matter what new transition I did. And I never thought it was a transition into something different. I was only pivoting. I never tried to make a total left. I pivoted to something a little bit different. And I think that's the first thing when somebody said, well, how did you do what you did? I say, well, you have to know what your skill set is and make sure. I wasn't trying to go to a whole different thing that I didn't have a skill set for. I knew an entertainer is going to bode well if I did something else. And I'll tell you what it taught me. When you're on stage, you get immediate applause. You know when it works. You know when you're on. In fact, we used to do medleys. We used to know on the intro, this was a mistake. We had endings to each song in the medley because we knew we did not want to play through this whole medley for this crowd. So you're starting to understand an audience hearing what you're doing. And that applies to when I talk on the floor, anywhere. If somebody's on the floor and says, yo, Jim, how the hell are you? Great, how are you? You have to be a chameleon to how they're talking. Then again, if they're nice and proper, I'm also, but I'm more aware of what I'm saying by what they're hearing. So I think that changes a lot. Some people, they don't edit at all. And I'm constantly trying to make sure I form it in a way that they're hearing it in a certain way. And so it was all entertainment. No matter what I did, it was entertainment. So there's no difference. But in a transition, I understood my skill set. And I thought if I'm going to do something else, I want to make sure that it uses the same skill set. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
You weren't going from entertainment to being an accountant.
No. Oh, God, no.
You know,
No.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's entertainment and education kind of wrapped into one. And obviously, if you have a personality that can be adaptable, read a room, read an audience.
It's the same.
It's the
same. And even I taught in a grade school. I taught, and because each thing was the same thing, I was teaching kids how to play drums. And everything I did, if I thought I could help somebody, I liked that. Now, I never called myself a teacher, but that's what I did. I used to help somebody learn how to play what they wanted to play. It was a little bit different the way I went into it was a little bit different.
Well, you take this test, you pass the test.
Yeah.
You have all these stories.
Yeah.
You have all this education and all this knowledge.
Yeah.
And then we get a book.
Yeah, okay. The jump right there, which was 30 seconds, was 6 years writing the book. And then 2 years to try to find a literary agent and a publisher. I didn't want to self-publish it because I thought the subject of wine obviously is worldwide. If it was just going to be about me and music, that could have been in the Delaware Valley, and that's fine. And you're famous a mile square, fine. But I thought this, as I got it and I worked at it and got better and better, I was starting to get cocky on it. I said, no, I can find a publisher. But I'm always the glass half full guy anyhow. I don't see any point to being a Murphy's Law. Yeah, it always happens to me. I always thought something good's going to happen. So I kept trying to get an agent, and because a publisher will not take any unsolicited manuscripts. They won't even open the PDF because they're afraid that if they turn you down, 2 years later they sign somebody, you would sue them and say, you stole my idea for the book. So you can't even send any publisher your manuscript. It has to go through an agent. So I didn't know if I could even find an agent. The story of each thing, of how I finally got it written, I finally got an agent. I even had an agent and then fired the agent. All right, so I finally get the book ready and the manuscript ready. And I'm at my daughter's wedding, and I take all the plus ones out to breakfast. And I say to them, I don't know any of you. You're costing me a fortune. Why are you here? So I go around this table. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And I get to one guy and I say, who are you? And he says, I'm David Litt. I'm with Jackie. She's in your wedding party. I said, what do you do, David? He said, I'm a speechwriter. I said, people pay you to write speeches? He said, well, it depends on who you're writing speeches for. I said, who do you write them for? He said, the president. I said, you're Obama's speechwriter? He said, I am. I said, wait, you write speeches for the president? He said, I do. Now fast forward 3, 4, 5 years, and I call my daughter and I say, can you give me David Litt's phone number? She said, yeah, he married Jackie. Great. So I call him. Hi, Mr. Quaile. I'm thinking this is nuts. By now, Obama's out, and he is the head of Funny or Die, which is like an online kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I'm trying to get an agent for this book. Well, send me the manuscript. So he prints out the manuscript. And by that time, he had a book called Thanks Obama, a speechwriter's journal. And I saw him on CNN. It went to #1.
Wow.
So he prints out the manuscript and he slides it to his agent. And the publisher calls me. Okay, I'm thinking I'm in. 8 months go by after we're getting the proposal ready for publishers. 8 months goes by, that agent calls me and says, I can't sell the book. I don't know what to tell you. I can't sell the book. Maybe we'll move on to your second book. And I go, no, it took 66 years to write the first book. I'm not going to have time, So I said, how do I fire you? And he said, excuse me? And I said, well, if the point is for you to sell my book and you can't, then why would we be, whatever? And he said, well, I said, but I'm going to get a publisher. So I need another agent, and I don't want this to come back to bite me. I said, so how do I fire you legally so that when I get a new agent and another publisher, I don't have any problems? He said, I'll send you the wording. So he sent me the wording on a text, and I put it in an email, sent it back to him. And then I get home, and now I'm mad that I wasted 8 months after all this. And I come home, and my wife says, didn't somebody ask, did you find a publisher yet? And I said, I don't remember that. So now we go to an old computer hard drive, and I'm searching. I don't remember the name. I don't remember. And then I'm at work, and she calls me and says, I found the agent. Her name is Jackie Meyer. She worked for Warner Books for 19 years. I found your response to her saying, thank you very much, as cocky as I was. Thank you so much, but I found an agent already. I'm so, I wish you the best, like that kind of arrogance. And then, so I send another email, this time not as arrogant, saying, unfortunately, it did not work, but I'm not mentioning
who the agent. You were groveling a little bit?
I was.
Tail was firmly between your legs. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
Anyhow, so I sent her an email, and I said they weren't able to find a publisher for the book. She puts, give me a call. I call. She says, no way. There's no way they were not able to find a publisher for this book. Send me the proposal that they sent. So I send her the proposal. She says, it's awful. The book I like a lot. The proposal's awful. You have to give competitive titles, and you have to give portions of each chapter maybe, and you have to write a whole separate intro for them on how you would possibly sell it and who you are and your bio. She said, this is terrible. The original title was Tales from the Wine Floor. They wanted to change it to Ask a Somm, which is certainly not as catchy. So she changes the proposal all around everything, and then now we start pitching it again to other publishers. She can't pitch it to the same publisher because they already said no, theoretically. And then 3 months went by. I burst into my boss's office with my arms up, and I called Jackie, and she said, how does it feel to be a published author? And then now you start editing the book with the publishers, right. Readers and everything. And so they have an editor for that and everything. So all the things, now they want to change so much of it. You have to hold the line and figure out what do you really want and what are you trying to be a team with? Right. Because like anything, like this podcast, you do have to work with a team all the time. Well, I'm used to working in a band as a team, but I never worked on a team where everybody had a different job. We all had the same job.
Right.
So now I had to figure out how to do this, and that was a learning curve because after living with it for a few years, I didn't want to change one word. Well, after a while, you learn you have to, and then I had to deal with somebody else. So I went to my sister, who was a teacher. She taught 5th grade, and she was really funny, and she could write herself. So I would send things to her, and she would say, a sister, I didn't get it. I said, what didn't you get? That was good part. She says, nah, I didn't like that one. I said, what are you kidding? I mean, 7 brothers, 4 sisters. Yeah, I'd argue with her. She says, I said, I don't know, can't we try again? So I tried again, and she would write back. She would go, okay, that one I like. Well, then when I finally got it all done, every time I sent it to the editor, Roman and Lufa, they liked that, everything that I changed. So then I learned pretty much, okay, stick to your guns when it's really something needed for the info, but let it go if it's just an opinion, because they have a better opinion than you.
And to listen to, I learn from your sister. Yeah. That's the other lesson.
Yeah. Don't.
But I mean, it's a fascinating story, and it's really one of resiliency, because you could have shut the door on this a ton of times. I mean, you were beating down doors.
Yeah.
Thought you had it in, didn't have it in,
Yeah.
found someone else, you didn't give up. Right? And that's so much of what goes into, doesn't matter what industry you're in, what you're doing, that's what a leader has to do in anything that they're trying to accomplish,
You
right?
know what's funny? It is. But you know what's funny? I thought, and going in, I thought, let's go 2 years. And my wife and I said, okay, 2 years, if it doesn't work, we can't find a publisher in 2 years, or an agent at least. Let's self-publish. Modern day, it's not a terrible thing to self-publish. Most people can't tell the difference. And you say, what is the difference between self-publishing and getting a publisher? Distribution is number one. Mm-hmm. And reviews and things like that. They won't review a self-pub, Mm-hmm. And I just thought I'd like to be in other countries. I'd like to see where this can go. Right. And a publisher can get that out there. When I finally said to my wife, let's self-publish after 2 years. By the end of the 2 years, I thought, I got 2 years invested in this. All right, let's give it one more year. Okay, now you're 3 years behind. I don't want to throw out 3 years. Right. So I kept going. And the more time it took, the more determined I was to make it work. At that point, I didn't care. And I even had a mantra in my head saying, some dreams don't have a timeline. That's what I told myself. And it is the way all my life has been. If you want to do something and you want to transition into anything else in life, and I don't care what it is in life, it might not be on your timeline, but if you're determined that it's going to happen, it will. Yeah. I'm not big in the manifestation of things, but I am thinking there's a determination. Now, it might not be on your time, and it might be longer, but I was prepared to wait because I thought the end result was worth it.
This is a great story, but I want to go back to some of the stories from the book, right. Some of the fun stories. But my question is, why don't you tell the people exactly what the SOM test is like for the person who doesn't know what that is? People think you take a test. Yeah. Tell them what the test really is.
Well, there's 4 levels to this. There is an intro level, and you can't call yourself a SOM at an intro level, but you can't go for the certified level unless you passed level 1. I'm a certified level, a certified SOM. Then you go to advanced and then a master SOM. Now, master is different. Had I been 38 rather than 68, I would have went from master. There's only 74, I think, in America right now. And there's only 350 or so that ever passed since 1974, ever, in any country total. Wow. But the certified SOM, I wanted to get to. I wanted to get to it, and there's 3 levels of that, 3 tiers. You have to blind wines. There's a red and a white, and you have to say what the grape is, what the region is, what the vintage is, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, or 5 to 10 years old. And they're not cumulative. If you don't do that correct, you don't get a chance to go to the test. They call that theory. Now you're going to take the test. And there's only so many ones you're allowed to get wrong, but they don't tell you what you got wrong. And you can make the same mistake over and over and over. You have to wait a certain time before you can get it. But if you don't pass the first part, you don't get to take the test. If you get that test right and have passed enough questions, now you're serving people at a table. Now, it's in a mock restaurant, and you have one person as a proctor, and then you have 4, 6, or 8 people. And it says male, female, female, male, and you have to open the wine correctly, pour. First the host, and then clockwise to females first, and then males second, and then back to top off the host. And you have to greet the guest of honor and they're hiring you because wine is not just wine. It's for the certified SOM. It's beer, sake, coffee, and 110 classic cocktails. It's everything. So now they're saying, as you're pouring, what's the origin of Campari? What's in a Madras? What's in a this? And people melt down. They drop bottles. They think, all right, my background was in entertainment. I thought if I could get to the service level, I got this. I'm used to being in front of a crowd. Everyone else, that was the Mount Everest. If you're going to get in front of a crowd, we're never going to be able to do it. I thought, just get me in front of an audience. I'll be okay. Mm-hmm. So when I finally got to each section, I finally poured everything. You have 15 minutes to do everything and do everything correct and pour every wine. You can't clink a glass. They're measuring. It has to be the exact amount, everything. When it was all done, I thought it was finished. And the proctor says to me, excuse me, can we stop for a second? Can you gather all these glasses for me and walk to the end of that restaurant? I said, certainly. So I gathered up some full, some empty. I've never done this before. It didn't work. I even owned my restaurant, but we didn't have a liquor license. So I walked to the end. I walked back, put it there, and he says, thank you. I stepped back and I thought, what was that about? So they're calling all the names out. They called my name. And I went up to the proctor and I said, can I ask you something? What was walk to the end? He said, couldn't rattle you. And I thought, there is the entertainment part of it. Because even if one thing didn't work on stage, you can't say we're done. You got to figure out another way to do it. So I just would not get rattled in front of an audience.
So what have you learned about the wine business from the company you work with, who are great people?
They are.
And obviously they've been a big supporter of yours. And what have you learned about the wine business itself from the wine standpoint? Because this is also a business podcast.
Yes.
And someday in the future, we might have one of the owners here to be part of the podcast. But right now, what do you know about the wine business, and what have you learned the most important for you?
Well, I'm on the floor of the wine, so I taste the wine. I'm like a gatekeeper. I only say yes and no. The owners will buy. It's their money. They're going to say how much and when. I'm going to say, yes, it is varietally correct. This is a good representation of this grape, of this bottle for that price. So you can get a really great bottle of wine, but if it's a number you can't sell, you say, we don't have that demographic. I can't sell that. Then again, if you want to have a wine, you say, it's cheap, but it's okay. I say, no, I'm not putting my name behind something now that I don't think is some kind of quality. But it's not my money that I'm spending. And you're right, the Arkins are the one that hired me because they wanted someone on the floor that did this, because they're very good with people and everything, but I don't think that they would be comfortable dealing all the time with people on the floor. And what I learned about the wine business is that you can't profile. And you're used to that your whole life. You're profiling people when they walk in. I've had people walk in, they are not dressed like they would know anything about wine. You cannot let that creep into your mindset, because that person sometimes blows you away with their knowledge. Mm-hmm. And then other times, somebody who you think is perfect and pompous or whatever, they're not so much, So I just feel like I've learned, not humility, because that would have to do with me. I just learned to have empathy for the person that you're talking to, number one, and to give them the benefit of the doubt no matter how much knowledge they do or they don't know. Not because I wanted to sell wine, only because you have to be nice. I don't understand the reason why you wouldn't be nice, and I see a lot of people in business, they're not nice. And the big culture shift in Roger Wilco from the time that I was there and time it is now was massive, because there was a point that I didn't think that we were treating the customers well enough. And it had to do with the employees. It did not have, we're not getting rid of customers. You can't fire the team. You got to fire the coach, So I eventually went to Joe and said, I don't think that I'm a fit here. I'm a square peg in a round hole. I don't think that I'm going to fit. Stop talking. And I kept going. I said, see, I'm giving an example. He said, stop talking. We're coming towards you. This is going to happen. Stay right where you are. Don't do anything. Don't say any more. Then they put a ton of money in the store, but what they did is they changed the culture of the store. They now have people that they come in to hang. They're just happy to be there. Everybody here, this sometimes even creates problems. Familiarity breeds contempt. They're like your best friend. They come in all the time. They feel like they know you. Some people that I don't even know their name say, how's Janet doing? I say, that's my wife. How's Janet doing? I'm thinking, how would they know? But they become friends. And I think that's a good thing.
As someone who cannot boil water, eats out every night, and only goes to the restaurants where I know all the bartenders' names, families, I text them in advance. I know it matters. It matters where you're walking in. You feel like family. And these people end up becoming family, which ends up being wonderful for someone like me who cannot boil water and cannot cook anything.
Agreed.
So I just have to ask, if you had one glass of wine, what would it be?
Bordeaux. I'm ready for that question.
I'm sure it's not the first time you've been asked, but I was just extraordinarily...
But right now, in America specifically, Bordeaux seems to be like a highfalutin, fancy schmancy kind of wine. But it's not. A $12 or $15 Bordeaux is perfect.
So, Jimmy, you wrote the book about,
Yeah.
based on the fact that you in your book entry, you talk about you wanted to write a wine book for the normal Joe, in your case, the normal Jimmy.
Yes.
What does the normal person need to know about wine?
God, that's a great question.
I know, that's why I asked
Oh, man.
I only get paid to ask great questions.
What is it they know about wine?
I get paid nothing to ask it, but that's...
Well, the first thing I would tell people is that you can talk about wine pairing and wine with food and everything. You should drink the wine that you like, and you shouldn't feel embarrassed by that at all. Drink the bottle that you like. However, I think I would advise people to not drink it like Coca-Cola. My wife likes Coke Zero. She's not a big fan of Pepsi. That's what she likes. Okay, wine shouldn't be like that. If somebody comes in and says, "Oh, there's my wine," I know right away. I don't have a conversation with this person. They're so branded that that's their wine. And the people that sell that wine, I'm sure, are thrilled, and they wanted them to be branded. I'm saying, I hope you never find the wine that is your go-to wine forever, because there's 7,000 grapes in Italy alone. The idea that you're going to find one grape and that's it blows me away. So I would tell people, try a wine. I remember going in the liquor store and I said to my wife, "Let's stop in, we'll get a bottle of wine." She said, "Great." I said, "Ooh, that's a great bottle." And I kept walking. She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "We're looking for wine for..." She said, "You just said that's a great bottle." I said, "I had that bottle." She said, "We know we like it." I said, "I know I like it. I was looking for something else that I'm going to like." There's so much variation. I would say be open to trying anything and everything would be my main thing, what the book was trying to achieve.
And you said drink what you like,
Yes.
but you do feel that there are these rules. There are these rules. You know, if I'm walking into a steakhouse and I'm ordering a steak, I should be ordering a glass of red.
Yes.
If I'm getting, some seafood, I should have a nice light glass of white.
Yes.
Is that real?
There are classic pairings. Peanut butter and jelly go together because they do. You don't know anybody puts ketchup on the peanut butter because there's a classic pairing. There are classic pairings that you should at least try, but you shouldn't stick to them as they're the only ones. It's not a rule, it's a pairing. So there's a lot of classic, and I put the most classic ones in there. But I personally, we have a lot of things we ate and drank when we were kids. Now you look back and you go, I can't believe that we did that. We used to put jelly on grilled cheese. I have no idea. I never heard of that before. Never. We used to do a lot of things in Philadelphia. What? And we had favorites of everything. But I think it was because of the rarity of it. When my father brought home Dad's root beer, we thought, oh, rich. We never had that. But so now I like root beer. My mother loved Harvey's Bristol Cream. Now that's not a very like beverage. But if I go to some place and somebody says, "You want to start with a cocktail?" You know what? I have a little bit of Harvey's Bristol Cream because I remember. And I say it in the book, I never walk past those blue bottles without thinking of my mother. And if that isn't what wine does for you, I can't explain anything else.
So before we have a few more minutes, but tell us a couple funny stories. One of the things you do in your book about the Tales of the Wine Floor are stories that kind of connect to people. And it's not to humiliate people. It's just the reality of what people ask because they don't know about anything. Tell us about some fun stories that are in the book that there's a lot more, but people would enjoy knowing.
I like that you say they're not trying to. I never wanted to be demeaning, and there were some things that were really funny, but you would have to hear it because when you're reading it on the page, it would sound too mean-spirited, and that I did not want.
Right.
But then again, I was trying to make them smile. So my favorite, when people say, "What's your favorite tale from Wine Floor?" I'm used to because I've done book signings and speaking engagements, and I know what they're going to ask. And that's the number one question. What's your favorite tale from Wine Floor? The second question that I get is, do the people that were in that tale from Wine Floor, do they know they made it into a book? And that I don't know because a lot of these people I don't know. Sometimes you're trying to do it just to get them to just engage a little bit.
So what is your favorite story?
A guy walks in, he's holding a big jug of wine, and he says, "You see this jug?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "How long will this last before I have to dump it out?" I said, "I think you should dump it out as soon as you open it." Now, and he did laugh. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're longer conversations. They'll give you a longer one. A guy comes in, he says to me, and these are written. And in the book, I just put customer, me. I put no comment.
Right.
And they say, these are word for word. You could even go to Facebook and scroll back on me and find every one of them. They used 42 of the 100 tales from Wine Floor. But then there was other questions and answers in the book because I didn't want it to be a joke book on wine. I then put the question and then answered it in full. in the book. But a guy comes in, he says, I need wine for my wedding, my daughter's wedding, but I don't want it to be too good. I said, well, I understand. You don't want it to be too expensive. It's a wedding. He said, no, I don't want it to be too good. I said, well, now you have me curious. Why not? And he said, well, I want it to be good enough that they drink it, but not so good they drink too much. And now I'm playing along. I said, okay. I take out 3 bottles. I say, this bottle, terrible. See this next bottle? Worse than the first. Third bottle, worst of all 3. And he says, somebody drinks it. I said, they do. I'll take it. And so he says, where's your beer? I said, good beer or bad beer? And he laughed and he goes, you're a funny guy. I should invite you to my wedding. I said, I'd be happy to come. I heard you're serving bad wine. Well, he did. He laughed and he said, oh, man, just tell me what to get and I'll get it. So
it's an entertaining book. And,
it's a great read.
And I think it's important that you've been able to pivot. But one final question, and by the way, it falls into everything you've ever done in your life. You're kind of like a Beatles aficionado as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because it kind of shows that and what you've done and how you're always passionate about it.
Yeah.
Tell us one interesting thing about the Beatles that we might not know before we end this podcast.
Wow, Joe, you're killing me with these hard questions. Well, I think the Beatles were the biggest phenomenon, certainly in my life and maybe in everyone's life. And I just have...
Up till Taylor Swift, by the way.
Up to Taylor Swift.
Right now, it's a new generation.
Yeah, totally is. But
I'm a geriatric Swiftie.
I'm amazed at anybody who is the best at what they do. And everything that I strive for is trying to be the best that I can do. But I am looking at somebody, and if I want to know how to do something, I'm looking at the person who did it the best. And the best band were the Beatles, and the best voice was McCartney, and the best everything were the Beatles. And I remember so many things that take me along in my life. I watched the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I was 7 years old in 1964. So I watched all this. All this happened in a time of my life that forms everything that I did after. And the Beatles were just the best there is. I can go back and listen to things again and again and again and again. And I think they just happened so organically that it's never going to be repeated because the world is never going to be the same. So I think that I even end the book when somebody says, who would you like to share a bottle of wine with? I said, Paul McCartney. So the Beatles were just, I think it's just...
Obvious it wasn't you, Christina, from Vineland, but now it might be because he just got to meet you.
Listen, Vineland is...
I know, but I mean, he just got to meet you, which is great.
He did.
So,
yes.
But Jimmy, thank you for your time today. And as I told you, Christina, this would be a Simply Dynamic podcast because Jimmy is simply dynamic in many ways, and not because I've known him a long time, because I know his passion about what he does. We thank you for being with us today. And Christina, I'll let you wrap up.
No, Jimmy, it was just a pleasure. I mean, reading through the book, encourage everyone that has never heard of it, Tales from the Wine Floor.
Where can they buy it, by the way?
Everywhere in the world. Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon. It's everywhere. It's in 38 countries.
Yeah, it's called Tales from the Wine Floor and 100 questions.
Of a sommelier, yeah.
Of a sommelier. So I think it's great, and it was a great read, and we're great to have you here. And we hope this book becomes a bestseller for you and for those of us who know you.
It's a pleasure being here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. What was your key takeaway from this discussion? Share it on our social media channels at Simply Dynamic Podcast. Next up, in our Fresh Perspective segment, established leaders and early career professionals will share recommendations on books that provided inspiration and insights for their leadership journeys.
A book that I would recommend is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that's really because I was not a good communicator and I was an introverted person who didn't even know how to approach the topic of communication. And that book was the first way that really gave me the framework and the grounds to follow to breach that challenge. So I think the way that he lays out the concepts in that book just breaks it down at a level that anybody can apply, whether you are an individual contributor or if you're a leader at any level. There's topics in there that you can use to relate to your people and to the people that you're working with.
The book that's really driving me these days is 11 Rings, The Soul of Success by Phil Jackson in partnership with Hugh Delante. This is a really great book. I'm actually rereading it now for the second time. And it explores Phil Jackson's strategy on securing 11 championship rings. He was very successful with the Chicago Bulls and the Los Angeles Lakers and had some of the greatest players of all time, two of which, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, on his teams. So imagine having to lead a team of diverse players with superstars in the NBA. The four key leadership takeaways that I've really pulled from this book that I've really honed in on is 1, empowering players. 2, valuing individuality while keeping the team focused. 3, team chemistry. And 4, adaptability.
There's a really powerful book that came out about a year and a half ago, I believe. It's called Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. Many people know her from her work, the TED Talk on vulnerability, which was certainly game-changing. One of the reasons I love the book is it really is just that. It's an atlas of emotions, 87 emotions that she outlines. Most of us have about 5 or 7 that we know how to articulate, and it often falls short in our conversations with our loved ones and our colleagues and employees. So we need to really develop that emotional language, and I think Brené did a wonderful job to really outline that and give people a way to be able to understand what the different emotions are. There's actually 34,000 unique emotions that we experience. That might be a little bit much for people to really wrap their heads around, but it is important that we grow this emotional language, and I think this is a really key way to learn that as humans and to create a common language for our emotions. Christine Miles, CEO and founder of Equipped, creator of The Listening Path, member of the Executive Advisory Council here at the Roar College of Business.
Tanika Wilson, Staff Vice President, Market Solutions at Elevance Health, Rowan MBA alumnus.
Colin Cox, Senior Financial Analyst at Lockheed Martin, 2020 Roar College of Business, Masters in Finance graduate.
In each episode of the Simply Dynamic podcast, we'd like to close out with an action-oriented tip from an expert that you can implement in your workplace. Today's expert advice comes from Keisha Taylor, a senior director at NAF, a national education nonprofit that brings schools and businesses together to better prepare students of all backgrounds.
Leadership for me is a behavior, and I often look to leaders of organizations to see what their behavior exudes and exemplifies. And I look at staff, personnel, and see how they respond to that leader. It's really important for me as I think about all the places and spaces I go, when I'm looking at that leader, what does it tell me about their character and who they are? I like a lot of the work of Simon Sinek. One of my favorite books is Leaders Eat Last. And I've read it a few different times, and it always comes back to building a strong organization takes a strong leader who oftentimes looks to their organization, their company, as members of not only their team, but of their family. And family can have many different connotations. But one of the things in Sinek's book he really talks about is that the strongest leaders are thinking about everyone all the time. And that's oftentimes what you do with your family. And so when I think about the different systems and where there are organizations that are weaker, I look at some leaders and I think, they might need a note or two to think about how they strengthen their organization and their culture by the way that they're leading, and basically thinking about how they might be able to strengthen the culture with positive affirmation and support of their staff. One of the things that I also think about, I've had the great pleasure of talking to leaders of very large companies, Fortune 500 companies, and I think of Ursula Burns, and I think of some of the challenges and opportunities that she's had, that she's exemplified in her leadership and her work over many years. She gives back to the community, and she takes on many great challenges. And I think about when she led her company, how great that company did. And I'm in awe of her. And I've listened to her speak many, many times. I've had the great pleasure of having her close up and personal because she was a board member of the organization that I work for. And in addition to that, Ron Williams, who led a large healthcare system, he wrote a book as well. So did Ursula Burns. Everybody writes a book, which is awesome. And one of the big pieces and takeaways from his book is thinking about your character as a leader first. And that is a priority. And when I connect the dots to Simon Sinek's work, that is truly what the through line is for leadership. And I think about another favorite author that I tell and challenge everyone to read is Brené Brown in Dare to Lead. She always references the fact that who you are is how you lead. And so when we think about those strong organizations, the best places to work, when you think about the leadership, those who are strong in culture and who they are and confident in how they lead and work with others. Keisha Taylor, Senior Director, Alumni and Post-Secondary Engagement, NAF, Rowan University, College of Education, Class of 1998, Class of 2000, Rowan University College of Education Advisory Board, Alumni Association member.
Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today, and thank you, our audience, for listening to the Simply Dynamic podcast. This podcast is a collaborative project led by the Graduate Studies team at Rowan University's Rohr College of Business in partnership with our hosts, Joe Devine and Christina Renna, and with support from producer and creative director Keith Brand, a professor in Rowan's radio, television, and film department. Music from this episode came from Epidemic Sound and Renku Corporation, recorded in collaboration with nonprofit partners. To learn more about the Simply Dynamic podcast, visit simplydynamicpodcast.com. Until the next episode, take care, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.